All right, this is Patrick Rogers, and today we have the privilege to have John Brink on the show. And John is the CEO of Brink Group of Companies, which is 10 plus companies with a couple hundred million in annual revenues. Welcome to the show, John.
Hey, good morning, Patrick. Nice to be on your show.
Fantastic. I'm so super excited, John. You have such a story to tell. I want to give just the audience just a little bit of a background before we dive in. So, John was born in 1940 in, at the time, the Nazi-occupied Holland during the Second World War. His mother was left to raise her three kids when his father was drafted into the Dutch army, and they wouldn't know if he was dead or alive until the liberation of their village by Canadian soldiers in 1945. And that's the exact moment that John actually decided he was going to move to Canada. And that happened. And another one of John's lifelong dreams is owning a sawmill. That came to fruition 10 years later in 1975 with the creation of Brink Forest Products. And since then, they have become North America's leading secondary manufacturer of value added wood products. John's now 83 years old, continues to succeed in his role in president and CEO of the Brink Group of Companies and 10 other companies. I think a great thing is in recognition of John's lifelong achievements, he was awarded an honorary doctorate of laws degree by University of Northern British Columbia. Less than a month later, he also received the Order of BC in June 2019, the highest achievement a civilian in BC Canada can achieve. So, John, an honor and privilege to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on. Before we dive in, I'm sure you have lots of things, but what's one interesting fact about yourself that maybe not many people know?
Oh, interesting. I'm I'm very open, and at the same time, I'm also sometimes a bit of a loner. I'm very outgoing. I'm obviously doing a lot of podcasting. I've done about 200 of them or so, I guess. But at
Wow.
the same time, I'm also uh, very much on my own, and at times, and I like that part. I'm not. Out there and doing a lot of activity. But I do a lot of stuff. But at the same time, I'm also uh, uh, very contented to be on my own and from
Yeah.
time. Yeah,
Yeah, you're happy to be on your own. And a lot of times some people they just need that time to re-energize, right?
exactly.
Yeah, very good. So John, I gave just this very brush stroke on your story. You have an amazing story to tell and I would love to hear it, man.
Yeah, so as you already indicated, I was born in northeastern Holland in November the 1st, 1940. And then, as you already indicated, my mother brought us up, the three kids, because my dad was drafted into the Dutch army, and the last they heard from him was that he was caught in the bombing of Rotterdam that killed thousands and thousands of people. So the warriors were tough, especially for families like that. And I still remember from the time that I was 3.5, 4 years old, hundreds of bombers in the air flew, a
Mm,
lot of them over our area. And the sound of that, I still remember, even from being small, an
mm,
unbelievable sound of hundreds of bombers. And they will be bombing Germany, and particularly in the northeastern or northwestern part of Germany. We were about 15 minutes from the border, and at nights a lot of times my mom would take us out to look, not to look at the planes, but it was safer to be outside rather than inside, and
wow.
we would see cities burning in the distance. The other
Oh my
part
gosh.
that's very important about it is that the winter of 1944-45 was called the hunger winter,
Mm,
and things were extremely difficult then. It was the coldest winter on record, and we as kids would every morning go out with gunny sacks into the railroad yards and pick up anything edible and burnable. And the reason that we did as kids, because they wouldn't shoot us, they would boot us one, and then we'd be back the following morning.
mm,
And then the other
wow.
part that stands out likely is that we were liberated April the 12th, 1945, as you indicated, by the Canadian Army. It made such an impression on me that I knew from that point forward I would go to the land of my heroes. I tried to go when I was 17. I was then drafted into the Dutch Air Force
Mm,
for about 30 months. And then I finally won when I was 23. And with the dream of building my own lumber mill. Why build a lumber mill? Because my grandfather was a master carpenter. My dad worked in the lumber. And so to me, the dream was to go into the lumber.
Ah, so there's
And
that passion behind it. Sure.
that was the passion and always has been. And then the other part, I wanted to start with nothing when I left. And academically, I was not a success story. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times and got a job when I was 14. And he said, well, what are we going to do with this guy? Do we send him to the mentally challenged school or should we get him a trade? Fortunately, they chose to get me a trade, a furniture maker, and it served me well in going forward. But always kind of felt, Patrick, that all my friends that went to college and university, they were then not so much my friends anymore because I became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but then it was kind of looked down on. And, in an indirect way, I always kind of felt like I had failed. And so then after the Air Force period, I worked again quite successfully for one of the largest lumber importers in Holland, but I still felt, to me, that I could do just as well as everybody else did, and so I then went to Canada to prove to me that I could do it, and I wanted to start with nothing. And what I did then is I had one suitcase, 2 sets of clothes, 3 books, and and I had 150 Canadian dollars when I left Schiphol, the airport in Amsterdam, and then when I came to Vancouver, by pure coincidence, I went to the immigration office and I could not speak English, so I met a guy that was German. I could speak some German.
Yeah.
I told him what I wanted to do. He said, and that's the first time that we mentioned this,
Right.
BC is one of the larger provinces in Canada, obviously. It's a lot of lumber, big province. So he said to me, Vancouver is one of the biggest cities in BC. So he said to me, go to Prince George. That is physically in the center of British Columbia, about 500 miles north of Vancouver. And so I took the bus. That's where the opportunities are. That's where there's the boom. So I went on the bus for about 12, 13 hours, came to Prince George. And then when I come off the bus, I had my suitcase, my 3 sets of clothes, 2 sets of clothes, and the 3 books. And I counted my money. I counted at least 3 times. I had $25.47.
Wow.
What I did have is a positive attitude. I always, and then the passion, whatever I do, I give it all I got and work it. So I started from there. And as a cleanup man, then very quickly I became a superintendent of one of the larger mills. I had to learn to speak English, obviously, first. And then from there on in, 10 years later, as you indicated, I started my own lumber company. And that was the first company that I got really involved in. And today it's a fairly major secondary manufacturer. And then gradually build up other companies alongside. So today we have 3 silos. The one is lumber. The other silo is warehousing, distribution, and logistics. And the other silo is real estate, residential, commercial, and industrial. And so that's where we are today. And then some other things in between that we may touch later on is that it took me 32 years. And even then, when I was already starting to be successful, people used to say to me, why don't you write a book about it? Why? So I thought about that several times. And then for 20 years, I started, I stopped. And then at now 83, so when I was already in my late 70s, I said, if I don't do it now, it will never happen. So I wrote a book, Against All Odds, that came out about 3-4 years ago, also audio actually. And it's not about how successful John is, but rather the opposite, going through all the ups and downs and staying the course. And been quite successful actually. And but I never wrote a book in my life. And then if you do an autobiography, as you likely know, you cannot start it and then after a while say, well, I don't like it, I'll do another one. And, no, you got one crack at it. And so that's what I did. It took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it.
Wow. I love that. And I love the way you described it too. It's not necessarily about John, it's about all the ups and downs, but having the staying persistent with that attitude, that positive attitude, and I'm sure that's what pulled you through along with the passion and work ethic. I mean, that's the great
Absolutely.
core values. Is is
Absolutely.
is that the same core values in all of your companies, John?
Yeah, I would say that the base became the lumber side. So that has been now pretty much 50 years that when I started it with 3 employees. So from there on in, it has grown consistently. We've gone through all the ups and downs. Also,
Mm,
economically, as you know, the cycle from 2006 to 2009 was the recession. In the 50 years that I have it, I probably have gone through 8 recessions.
right,
The worst one was likely 2006, 2009,
right,
became the recession, nearly depression. And
right.
we survived that. And then I thought I've pretty much seen it all from the economics perspective. We'll have minor downturns here and there, but little did I know COVID would follow. And then from there and then the current recession that we are in now that had a major effect on our industry. Our company is still there and we will survive it, but one of the major downturns. And obviously, things are turning towards the better direction. We'll talk about that probably a little bit more. So, but then from the base of the lumber side, I then started acquiring other lumber companies, and it became really 3 different companies that are under the Brink group of companies on the lumber side. Then I've always looked at warehousing, distribution, and logistics. I bought another company about 4 or 5 years ago that is become a fairly major company to us, and we're probably the largest warehousing company in northern British Columbia. And then
Even bigger than Weyerhaeuser?
oh, no, no,
It's
no, no,
it's
no,
in their
no.
name though. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, I would, so, and then the other part is, the real estate, residential, commercial, and industrial is another silo of us that has become fairly large and, but at the same time, going through a challenging time because of all the things that we all know, the economics of all of those particular silos has been a bit of a challenge, although warehousing distribution has still been doing very well.
Right. So you talked a lot about the recessions, and I get it and understand from your standpoint that, hey, you've lived this life. There's been lots of ups and downs. You've maintained that positive attitude and resilience and passion. What's your approach though with your team members and your company overall strategy? Do you have like after going through 8 of these, right? Do you have kind of I don't know, a recipe or a magic sauce, or what's your overall methodology for handling a recession with your team and companies?
Well, there is nothing more valuable in business, at least in my opinion, Patrick, than experience. And then the other part is you can't do it alone. To build a good team of good people around you is critical for growth. And then at the same time, I'm probably looked at as being aggressive, but also conservative. So I'm careful, but when I move forward, I give a lot of thought to it. The other gift that I have likely is that I'm, people would say I'm a visionary. I look forward. I like to look at, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, where will it be and where should we be as a company? And so that's been my approach. So that downturns like the one that we are still in right now, I look at it as an opportunity in terms of
Mm,
where can we go from here? What will it look like after this thing changes? Are there interesting acquisitions or what
mm,
else? So we stay conservative. We maintain good relationship with the financial community, the banks, and other people, and I'm very involved in leadership of the industries, made may it be the lumber side, may it be the warehousing side, and I'm well aware of the political side, both on not only here in Canada but also on the U.S. side.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. There's a lot of people that during a recession, they'll tend to contract and kind of huddle down and not do anything. And, I follow a lot of people in business, specifically. One's Grant Cardone in his book, If You're Not First, You're Last. And he talks about that's the opportunity. The recession is the opportunity. That's where businesses can 10x their business by acquiring other or, doing things that everybody else is not doing.
And I agree with that 100%. The other part about it is that if you keep it lean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a tendency that companies, especially public companies, but also private in some cases,
Mm-hmm.
will overexpand and become too bureaucratic and not
Mm-hmm.
efficient anymore. And then they become like a big tanker ship. It takes them a week
Can't turn.
to
Yeah.
make it turn, right? So for me, and all my companies, I'm the sole shareholder of these companies. I'm there every day. I'm still the kind of guy, I have to mention that to you, is that I usually get up at 5:30 in the morning and I think I'm late. And
Ah,
I always make my bed and I'm always in a hurry. And I still work 60, 70 hours a week. And, so, and so in this period, we have to be lean and we have to look forward for the opportunities, but at the same time we have to make sure that we stay lean and mean.
yeah. Love it. So, John, what are, we talked about the recessionary aspect of it. What do you think are the things that has led to you being so successful in your businesses as a CEO and leader?
Probably more than anything is hard work. That people say a lot of times that oh, you're so successful, blah blah blah, and all the other things. You must have been lucky, or there must have been another reason. And I said, no, the harder you work, the luckier you get, right? So that's kind of how, in that. At the same time, is that the stay the course, and don't give up, and make sure that you make adjustments and be able to be, and look at what other people are doing and stay in touch with the market and changing things in the market.
Yeah.
So being alert to all the things around you, I think, is very, very important. And,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of our market is in the United States, so even the United States for us is very important. And I've dealt in that market for the last 50 years.
Gotcha. Yeah. One of the things you mentioned in our kind of pre-talk was that when I asked what's the biggest failure you learned from as a CEO, and you said it was not learning that failure should be embraced at an earlier age.
Right, is staying the course, right? So and not giving up, so that as you go through the challenges, is saying, well, that just doesn't work, that doesn't work, like for me, and kind of looking back, why I came to Canada is that because of the land of my heroes, but the other one is that I was not successful academically. What would have happened in Holland a lot of times, although I already was successful, even considering I failed grade 3 and say grade 7 3 times, and it became, if you wish, a laborer, and I'm proud of that. Is that that when I came here, I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it, and even when I already was quite successful, I still did not feel that I had succeeded. And one of the things that happened to me, Patrick, that may be of interest is that even after I was here for 32 years, I by coincidence walked into a store here and I picked up a book, and the title of the book was Driven to Distraction.
Mm.
And as I opened the book, it talked about ADHD.
Oh.
And I had never even heard of it. And I said to myself, oh my God, that's me. and that was January 1997, and I wrote in the book in Dutch because I was ashamed of it, that now I finally know who I am. And
Mm.
and the more I learned about it, ADHD, and going Google and searching, and you know, it took me 5 years, even then, before I would go to my doc, who was a personal friend and delivered our two daughters,
Mhm.
that one day, 5 years later, I walked into his office. He said, "Hey, John, why are you here?" I said, "I think I got ADHD." And so we looked at it together, and I do. And the more I learned about ADHD in particular, Patrick, is that I know it's a superpower. And I could not have done what I did unless I had ADHD. And I started to include it in my presentations that I did. And then I then found out that about 8% of the population are affected by it, if you
Mhm.
wish, are blessed by it. And but it's likely more than 20%. And a lot of very successful people are ADHD. So I felt I had to write about it. So I wrote a book about it,
Oh, wow.
ADHD Unlocked,
Right.
and very popular actually.
Yep.
And and I wrote it as somebody with an ADHD mind. Now, the interesting part that we may find is that I'm a very good writer
Mm.
and always was. And I'm very good at numbers, but I was not very good in school, and sitting there
Right.
and listening to all the stuff going on and
Right.
on.
Right.
If I walked out of the school and they asked me, what did he talk about? I haven't got a clue because I
Right.
was in a different world. And so that's what I did with this one. And and so I speak about it more. And as I said, there is virtually, Patrick, not a day that goes by that I do not encounter people that say, even last week I podcasted somebody, and that was a highly recognized medical doctor and has a doctorate in medicine and a PhD, and a very successful entrepreneur, very successful in science and all the other things. ADHD.
Oh yeah. John, I can't tell you how many guests, CEO guests I've had on the show that are self-proclaimed. They're like, I have ADHD, and they kind of say the same thing. This has been a superpower. Nobody else has written a book about it, but that's fantastic.
Now, the other thing that you may find interesting is
Yeah.
that, so I wrote a book about it,
Uh-huh.
and I talk about the book that I found, Driven to Distraction, was written by Dr. Halliwell, and in 1990. Now, he's going to be on my podcast next week. I
Oh,
believe it is next week. Yeah. So it's coming full circle. He approached me about it, and because I mention it all the time. And the reason that I mention it, Patrick, because the stigma around it, it is not a liability; it's an asset. And if people say,
mm,
like I write book, another book that I've written here, just to shout while we're on books here, is that I find a lot of people don't like what they are doing. And
mm,
and and I say change, because that affects your whole life if you go home and
sure.
you don't like your job. And then our young people, they say, I ask them, I do a lot of presenting to them and saying, what you going to do for a career? And say, well, I don't know. I say, well, find out about it. Why don't you check out the different careers or entrepreneurship? Talk to people that are doing it.
Yeah.
A lot of them are quite glad to talk to you and give you a direction. So, and I felt I had to write a book about it. So I did write a book about it. Is finding your passion, living the dream.
Love it.
And then saying the proper thing to ask them would be saying, okay, John, are you living the dream? I am every day. And that is so important. In fact, I heard something, I think it was on CNN or one of them, is that saying that 70% of the people that work in the United States do not like their job, and
Mm.
75% of the ones that work are looking for another job. I said, I can see it because I've met the people over and over and over again. Do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true, especially after COVID. There's so much. Gallup did a poll on this, and it's called quiet quitting. People are there, they're just not doing anything, they're not passionate about it, and they're not happy.
yeah, exactly.
Do you
So So that has been one, and then the other one that I do, since we're on the question of the books here, is that the other book that I'm writing actually comes out next July is Living Young, Dying Old, and and interesting in a way. So what I'm basically saying, it is not the number, is the quality of life that is important, and so the key is to understand this precious body that you have that will take a certain amount of abuse for a certain amount of time, and then all of a sudden that kind of, for all kinds of reasons, it will stop. And if you more, the earlier you're aware of that, this body is very forgiving, but you have to, whatever you put into it is very, very important in terms of diet and the type of food that you eat, and all the things. Obviously, the obvious ones are smoking, drugs, and alcohol. But outside of that, is that and to stay active physically. And as I probably told you at the intro, I've been very active in the gym. I'm supposedly the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America.
That is so cool.
I competed for Northern BC and came in second bodybuilding, third in physique in my category. I was already over 70. My category was 55 years, and most of the guys that I was competing against could have been my kids.
Yeah.
And then I competed provincially and came in third in physique, and then second in bodybuilding, which qualified me for the nationals and the Arnolds. And then COVID happened, and then now I'm training again so when I'm 84, I want to get again qualified for the Arnolds. And Arnold already has said he's going to pose with me and train with me.
Oh, very cool, man.
So
yeah.
Point that I'm making is this one, Patrick. I'm not saying that anybody should do that part, but at least stay active. Even if you spend 20 minutes a day walking or something, is already enough to keep yourself active.
Yeah.
Once you do it, and then at the same time, in terms of diet, become aware, become knowledgeable. The other part that you may find interesting, my wife is vegan, and I'm probably 80-20. I do all the shopping for her. And so in the grocery store, I always go to the outside where all the good stuff is, not to the inside where the not so healthy things are. So
Gotcha.
So that sort of a thing.
Awesome. Well, John, let me take a few minutes and kind of summarize some of my takeaways from our time today. One is $25, was it $25.47, I believe, but no matter where you're starting with, you came into it with attitude, positive attitude, passion, and work ethic, and those three core values have led you and your companies to amazing success. You talked about the recessions, and we dug in a little bit there, that major downturns, we're not looking at them as woe is me and the sky is falling. You look at them as opportunities, and even acquiring companies during those times and expanding. But at the same time, we also talked about not expanding too much and becoming bureaucratic, because then you're an aircraft carrier that takes, like you said, a week to turn, and so you stay nimble in that respect, and you guys can turn on a dime. One of the things I asked was, hard work is what has gotten you where you are, right? The harder you work, the luckier you get. And then we kind of talked a little bit about ADHD and how that's been actually a superpower for you. And I didn't know it, but likely more than 20% of the population, does have ADHD. A ton of great stuff in here, John. What's one takeaway that you'd really want the audience to absorb from our time together today?
But I would say, and I said it lots of times, is that, and I included in presentations that I do, how fortunate we are to live in North America. And I'm talking about Canada as well as the United States. If you look around the world to Europe and the Ukraine, as an example, or the Middle East, is that, we are so blessed with what we already have here. And let's be aware of that, and then being in a democratic system is so precious, and it can disappear so very, very quickly. And I fly around a lot because of my business that I do. And I always sit by the window and I look outside of the window and I said, I'm in paradise. And a lot of my business I do in the United States and in North America, period. And we are so fortunate, and we should be aware about how quickly things can change. And I know that from my experience, that the Second World War, and then a lot of people think that after the war is over, everything goes back to normal and all the other kinds of things. It doesn't happen that way. That once we squander this precious gift that we have where we live and the system that we have, democratic government, that if it disappears and it becomes a dictatorship or all the other things that happen in war, that will stay with you. Even for me, being born in during the first year of the Second World War, that still is with me even today. PTSD, seeing far too much that you've seen. I got counseling for the inner child, the fear of losing that one parent that was protecting us. And even still today, I have the feeling of hunger and cold and all those things. So what I'm saying, the one that I leave with us in North America and in the United States and in Canada it is so precious what we have. And that we live in a democratic system where dictatorships around the world, if I look at Russia, I look at North Korea, I look at Iran, I look at all those kind of places, how precious we are here, and that how quickly it all can change. And if I leave something with that, look around you every day when you get up and say, lucky, lucky us, so.
I love that. I love that leading with gratitude, John. That is especially such a, we can take that so easily for granted. We are so lucky to be born where we are. John, thanks again for being on the show. This was fantastic. I love your story. You have a great story to tell, and you told it so well.
Thank you, Patrick. And I'm going to send you copies of the books, actually. I'm going to sign them for you and I'll give. Yeah. Oh, the other thing I could say is that if you see the book, it don't cost you anything. But see what the price of the book is. Can you see it underneath it?
$25.47.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, John. That is very kind of you. I really appreciate that. Again, thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. My pleasure.
And for the listeners out there, please hit the like and subscribe button and help us spread the word about the show and what we're doing here. We're helping the next generation of CEOs and leaders be that much more successful. With that, this is your host, Patrick Rogers, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Take care.
Thank you.